Hello everyone and welcome back to Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. Prowler only. Last time we took on Silver Rathalos and Gold Rathian, the rare species of the Wrath duo. This time we'll be taking on some more in-game threats, though not necessarily rare species. And our first one is Hyper Devil Joe. Quest is called Pitched Pinnacle Battle and has us hunting a Hyper Devil Joe in the Ruined Pinnacle. We've got our dragon weapon equipped. I'll go ahead and take the quest and we'll head on out. Alright, Hyper Devil Joe. A common theme between the two monsters we're fighting today are going to be that they're not particularly that much different from their regular counterparts. The real only difference is that they have a little bit more health, which is actually quite a bit more because hyper monsters are generally very tanky. And of course the extra damage from the charged hyper spots. The main gimmick again is just that they have faster animations or slower animations, just depending on which attack they're using. It's not, I guess, the most difficult thing. The main thing is just trying to get it down as fast as possible. And if you are taking more damage, you know, it is a little bit more difficult. I know some monsters have more standout moves when they are in hyper mode, but at the very least, it makes them different enough, the moves they have, to where it feels like they have different moves. If that makes any sense at all. Pretty much just going for the face here. It's the only amazing hit zone at the start, and the tail's okay. It's not the best hit zone in the world. However, Devil Joe is special in that cutting his tail takes off such a large portion of it. I want to say around 40 to 50% of that hitbox whenever you actually finally get it cut off. The biggest issue with it is that a lot of his attacks can just be no tail. So you can very easily be hit by the tail if you're not playing particularly carefully. Once you get up enough gauge, you still do want to play close to him, but until that happens, you might just want to kind of keep some distance until you do feel comfortable, because once you do get the gauge, then you can actually start punishing some of the other attacks he does. He's very large, and that means a lot of his attacks are somewhat AoE, not entirely. But the biggest thing we have to worry about, and especially with our armor, is the dragon beams, because they just deal a ludicrous amount of damage, and we have negative 16 dragon resistance. The most standout move, I guess, is this little waltz here. I believe this is just a G-rank Devil Joe thing. So he'll do 3 steps, and on the third one, he'll drag his neck either to the left or right, and that gives you a tell for where it's going to come from. It's a bit of a weirdly precise attack, but not exactly where it looks like it's going to go. Just kind of a small hitbox, but sometimes you might be hit by it whenever it doesn't look like you'll actually be hit by it. And of course, as per usual, it's a Devil Joe, so a lot of its stomping attacks are just going to give you lots of trimmer. Even its pin attack is going to do that, so if you do have trimmer resist, it might give you an easier time of actually getting some Mega Boomerangs off once we actually get into that. We're actually getting pretty close to it, especially since we have Go Fight Win, so I'll try to look for it. There's only a couple of attacks you can really punish this monster for, because a lot of times he can end his attacks pretty quickly and then just immediately go into something else. I'd say the biggest thing is probably the boulder throw that disables you from actually throwing a Mega Boomerang at range too often. Of course, we get a bunch out here because our cat was pinned, but that's okay. I'm surprised he actually didn't die either. He's still got a decent chunk of health. All right, here comes the waltz. Just going to kind of walk forward. And sometimes he likes to spam it a lot, and we might be seeing this here. But in general, if you can keep him to one side, I'm not sure how you actually influence which direction it's going to attack from. But if you can sometimes get it to where you just have to run in one direction and you can actually counter him. So the first 2 steps you're safe on, but the third one's the one where you want to be prepared to dodge. He's going to actually attack our cats here, so I'll try to get a couple of hits on the tail. And a lot of times he is melee, but the boulder toss, I believe I said before, is one of the things where it's not the strongest in the world, but it is going to knock you out of some animations. This is an attack you can punish as long as you're in the right position for it. This was a bit greedy, but he really wasn't in a good spot to actually counter me, so I didn't feel too bad getting it out there. However, if you're already behind him, that gives you plenty of time to actually get some damage off. And even if not, a lot of times you can just run straight for him and get in under him before he actually gets the beam out, and you'll be pretty safe to just attack him there. All right, a couple of boomerangs here. Let's see what he does. There's another attack. He's not done it yet. It's kind of a sway combo. Think of something like Red Helm's Claw combo, where it's very wide arcing. I guess that wouldn't be like Red Helm's Claw combo, where that one's not really that wide arcing. It just kind of tracks onto you pretty well. But the wide arc does make it harder, especially if you do get an adept dodge on it early on, to actually get out of it, unless you're going immediately behind it. And that's pretty much our goal whenever we do it. But when he starts doing it, which he does like to spam it occasionally, so it should be happening eventually. I think this is it. So yeah, we'll try to get in under him here. And you don't always have to get the adept dodge either. It's pretty generous because of how slow it is. But once you get behind him, you can pretty nicely, for the most part, not always, he'll end it quickly sometimes, but sometimes he'll just drag it on, and that will give you plenty of chances for a Mega Boomerang. Here's the other Mega Boomerang counter we can do. I'm going to try to aim for this tail and just get rid of it, because it is just going to make the fight a lot easier. Normally the tail doesn't, other than cases like Rathian or even a Cantor, which would be a similar case to this, where it gets the hitbox down a little bit. But this is probably one of the largest, if not the largest, advantage you'll get for cutting a tail off. There's another beam, so we'll just get off to the side here. It doesn't drag it too far backwards, so you're pretty safe off to the side. But you do want to be careful to not be too close to the face. And sometimes if you're in front of him, he'll drag it forwards too, and that'll make it even easier if you try to walk towards him whenever he's going to do it, because he's kind of making it easier to just get behind him and punish him for that. Another stomp, we are out of range of it, so we can keep attacking here. Comes the waltz. Waltz is also sometimes safe to walk towards. It's really just dependent on where your positioning is when he starts the attack. And it's also another one of those attacks where the monster can pull it out and turn with it. So head turns aren't the most reliable on this monster. It is still possible, like you saw right there where he did a head turn. But if he does pull it out, you really don't want to be hit by that attack. So try to not get too comfortable with head turns. All right, here comes the sway. I don't really have anything to punish him with, so I'm just going to attack him at range. The hyper spot will always be on the face, and it will swap between the legs whenever he does enrage. So I don't know if it's guaranteed to always swap. I think it is. I don't know. Could be wrong on that, though. So just kind of think of it as always being on at least one leg. And of course, the leg that does have the spot on it, you want to be careful because he's going to be dealing lots of damage. Comes that boulder toss. We'll try to counter him really quickly with this. It's a little bit difficult to actually hit his face because it is so small. And since he does like to move it around a lot too, it will miss occasionally with your regular boomerangs. Of course, not to even speak about Mega Boomerang, you're really just trying to go for hitting the monster at all and not necessarily the most pinpoint accuracy. In fact, that's why you're seeing me try to hit the tail a lot more. Just because I feel more comfortable actually getting some consistent damage on the tail, especially considering it's so large. All right, try to dodge that. Again, that attack is fairly pinpoint, but if it does hit you, you're taking a lot of damage from it. So it's a goofy looking attack, but it at the very least is memorable, I guess. So you won't really let your guard down too much. He's doing a beam in a random direction. Not quite sure why he's doing that. You wasn't even far enough in front of him for that to actually hit him. So, kind of weird, but it's old gen Monster Hunter. You kind of expect that. Even in new gen, you do. It's kind of a Monster Hunter thing. There's a spin. Just get off to the side here. I will try. There we go. That's good. Just start attacking the tail here. I'm not going to worry too much about the face unless the tail is just way too far behind. Because his face is always going to have that hyper spot that will actually let us farm a lot more gauge. Something else I will say about this beam attack here, it doesn't actually extend that far, so if you are too far away to get behind him, or are kind of in a neutral range or a middling range, then you can actually walk backwards and counter it that way with Mega Boomerang, and you'll be more likely to hit the face there. In fact, you'll actually probably be in a better position to hit the face and the chest there whenever he's enraged, so try to go for that if you are far enough away. It's a pretty easily punishable attack. Just make sure you're not going to get hit by it because, like this attack here, it's going to deal a lot of damage if you get hit. Right, there's the tail. It didn't really, 10 minutes. Fair enough. Okay, took a decent amount of time, but I mean, for a hyper monster in G rank, I think that's pretty decent for Prowlers at the very least. I don't know if hyper monsters have more health HP, or sorry, part HP. I don't want to say they do. I think I read somewhere or looked at something that said they don't. However, I could be wrong. Don't worry, I will carve that. You get 2 carves from it. I'll just try to not forget it. I'm very bad at forgetting parts sometimes. There's a face break too. So I'm noticing here that as long as you're at an angle, it's a lot harder for him to hit you at range, which would mean you're trying to get behind him, force him to head turn, because even if he tries to do the weird scoop beam when he does the waltz, that doesn't have the most range on it in the world. So if you are far enough away, he shouldn't trigger into it. And even if he does, you're pretty safe to actually still punish him as long as you're far enough away. And the boulder toss has to be straight on, so he'll still be forced to do a head turn if you're actually, once again, far enough away. So that would be another way to actually punish him at range, as long as he's in a cooldown. If he's not, then he can turn towards you and run towards you pretty quick. So it's not something you can immediately pull out just in neutral. However, if you do notice some longer animations that it takes for him to finish, then you can actually punish him pretty nicely. All right, another 10 minutes later, and he should be going down pretty soon here. I've been getting quite a few Mega Boomerangs off on him, which should end pretty well. I did not play that smartly, though. I should have went straight towards him instead of where the beam was. I was hoping I could have the timing correct, but I'm not really too used to actually adept dodging the dragon beam. So you see how much damage that actually does there. However, I think it was about half health. So yeah, not particularly great that I ran into that, but at the same time, it's very easily avoidable like that. You just dodge forward. You don't have to do any fancy shenanigans moving around him or anything like that. And if he likes to do it multiple times like this, you can easily just get right behind him again and keep comboing those Mega Boomerangs. The real only thing that's keeping you from throwing out more is just how much gauge you actually have. There's a waltz, we'll just dodge into him. And it might even be better to actually attack the leg just so you get the extra gauge gain, so you can actually punish him with even more Mega Boomerangs. I know there's only like 3 attacks you can easily punish him every time, and he's still not quite limping yet. It's a very tanky monster, but even though there's not, too many attacks you can actually punish him with, he does like to spam them somewhat consistently, so you'll still be getting a few Mega Boomerangs off every few minutes, which is really nice. It's fun to have a fight where you can actually get quite a few off without, having to constantly be on guard against something like, Furious Rajang or something that can just be quick and easily catch up to you and not really give you those openings. All right, here comes a Sway. We actually knock him out of it into Enrage. I'm going to be a little greedy here and actually try to do this. It was off to the side, so I'll probably just trade blows here. I think I'm fine with that. Boulder actually did quite a bit of damage there for what I used to, so that's okay. Let our cat heal us a little bit. I'm going to try to get off to the side, use a soothing roll. There's a stomp, but we don't have to worry about that because we're invincible. Keep stomping over there, which really isn't that useful for him because no one's over there, so I guess that's fine. The boulder toss. Couple of boomerangs to the face here. Normally he'll limp in this area and go to his sleeping spot, but really just depends on how he's feeling today. Comes another waltz beam. Get the dodge on that. Was actually getting close to being light there, which isn't great, but I think we'll be fine. Dodge forward there, make sure I don't take the beam to the face, and he should turn towards me. Be able to get quite a bit of piercing damage off there, which is nice. Comes a Sway. The wall shouldn't have moved in too much towards me, but he did end it pretty quickly, so that's fine. Let's see what he does next. Here comes the beam. He's actually moving this one backwards, so we'll have to dodge into it, so I'm not going to feel too safe to punish it, but that's okay. Here comes the Sway, so we'll dodge into it. Ready this one up. If he ends it too close to you, he can combo it into a stomp, which will waste your Mega Boomerang. But it's not too often that happens, so it's better to just try to get it out. And maybe you want to wait and see what he's doing. That way you don't waste it. It's really up to you. Alright, comes another boulder toss. It's fairly pinpoint too, so you don't really have to worry too much about it like dragging off to the side or anything. Which is good. You don't want a flying projectile that just covers the entire area. That wouldn't be too fun. Looks like he's finally limping away. He's going to go up to the next area, and then he will finally, I think... actually, he might move to a different area as well. It really depends on where you get him to limp, depending on what he does, because he'll actually sleep down in that area over there. That's straight away where the camera is. So I'm surprised he's actually moving upward to limp. And I used to think that he slept on this little platform over here, but he actually does not. I don't remember which monsters do. I know there are some. I want to say maybe Zenogre's one of them. It's a bit of a weird spot to sleep, especially since you're one area off from the Rathdin, which I don't think requires flying to get up to. I believe I've fought Devil Joe up there, so if he can get up there, certainly a Zenogre can, but I don't know. Maybe there's some weird quirk that doesn't make Devil Joe move up there, or sorry, Zenogre. Just rambling at this point. Comes a roar. Go ahead and slash out of our dodge. Couple of boomerangs, leave them to where the face will be. Throw one more out that's not charged. Dodge into the bite. We'll be hit by the trimmer, but that's a-okay. That doesn't actually do damage to us. Since we were trimmered, we do not have the option to guard there, so we are a bit sketchier. I actually think that the Devil Joe beam specifically needs guard up. There's some beams that do and some beams that don't, so you're fine. And I think he's going to dig here to his sleeping area. Yep. All right, now that he's sleeping, we actually have enough gauge for a Mega Boomerang to be fairly safe and have some extra reserves in case we still need to get some others off. In fact, I'll try to get the second one off as well. He has a fairly lengthy getting up animation, and he should combo it into a roar. So that's plenty of damage we'll be getting off, even if we run out of our regular boomerang power-ups. Two out here. The tail sweep is also a fairly consistently punishable attack with Mega Boomerang, since he always does it in twos. So that's a nice thing, especially if you're up close, where you can just very easily punish him, even if you don't have Mega Boomerangs. It's just a lot of downtime you have. Just make sure you don't get hit by the tail or the face while he's doing it. Actually, I don't think you can even be hit by the face while he's doing it, so that's even safer. All right, couple here. Just gonna bite forward. Get some nice damage up there while he's stomping our cat. They're not actually taking that much damage, surprisingly. One of the cats took a hyper stomp to the face and survived. So I guess they're doing pretty well for themselves. Probably had Palico Rally and defense up though. And there we go. Hyper Devil Joe is down. Took 25 minutes. Again, that's kind of what you have to expect with a very tanky monster in general, and then adding hyper health pools to it. But we got through it. Also, I'm not going to carve the tail. I'm not really worried about it. Every time I've fought him, and I've fought him like 5 times because recording this particular fight has been difficult due to power outages or mic not recording. It's been very difficult. So I'm not going to worry about the tail because I've heard it plenty of times. So I have anything that I need from it. All right, back to the hub. And speaking of recording issues, I actually recorded this entire episode once before, and that was where my mic was not recording. So I'm having to go over this again, but it's okay. The weapon for Hyper Devil Joe is the Vengus Mace XR. Has 220 melee with 20 melee dragon and negative 15% affinity with wipe sharpness. So for your dragon options, not the worst in the world. Actually might be better than most options you get, because there's not really too many close range dragon options that aren't either just low raw or low raw and low dragon element, which is kind of weird, but this is certainly an option. Hyper Devil Joe is interesting, and that's one of the monsters you'll be making armor from for the general crit meta set for hunters. But for cats, you don't get any armor or even weapon skills for that matter, so it's not really something you'll want to have to make. Speaking of the armor, the Vengus Helm XR only has 158 defense, so certainly not setting any records in the raw defense department, and you have -8 thunder resistance and -8 dragon resistance, so not really particularly great there. Your best elemental resistance is water resistance, which is only 6, so you'll only be getting 12 there. It's not really that great raw, and even element is just kind of terrible, so I do not recommend fighting a Hyper Devil Joe if you are playing Prowler, for Prowler equipment specifically. Alright, we've got our ice weapon equipped, and the next fight we'll be taking on is called Rajang Against the Machine, has us hunting a Hyper Rajang in the desert. Go ahead and take the quest and head on out. Alright, Hyper Rajang. So, similar, like I said before, to Hyper Devil Joe, the monster is not really that much different. In fact, so much so that I really don't notice the changes, even to the hyper, animation changes, which is, particularly funny. I guess that's because I'm a ranged weapon and I'm just adept dodging everything anyways, so staying at range and making sure I'm not close to the instant attacks that Rajang normally has anyways is kind of par for the course. He does like to grab rocks a lot, which I think is just a general G-rank Rajang thing. He'll run to the gathering spot for him, which is sometimes in the middle of the map and sometimes on the edge of the map, and sometimes in 2 different places on one area. It's kind of weird, but you'll have to chase him a lot if he likes to go over there. He's a particularly hoppy monster as well, so when he is enraged, he'll like to do his bouncing attack a lot. And as I've said before, sometimes you can predict the Kelby hop into a back hop. I don't remember what the particular details are on it. Like, he might do a Kelby or a back hop here. he didn't. So I'm not really sure what the specific tell is for it, but I know they generally do it a lot on like the level 140 Rajings in 4 Ultimate with Greatsword. That's just kind of the standout example I can think of. Scariest attack is the Cubby Hop because it comes out so quickly, so either be prepared to adept dodge into it or just favor dodging to the left and positioning to the left. That way you're not hit by it. Of course, if you're too far away, then you want to go to the right instead. But if you're, letting him get close to you, then you're not really going to be too far away to actually let that happen. The most punishable attacks he has for Mega Boomerang are not the punches. Punches are a bit weird. I'll talk about those in a moment. But the standing beam, the jumping beam is also, he's going to wombo combo me to death. Hopefully not. I'm going to use the soothing roll here. He really likes the punching. All right, he ran past me anyways. But the standing beam, the jumping beam is also a little bit harder to counter, but it is still counterable with a Mega Boomerang. And then the bouncing attack, because the bouncing attack, when I get to it, is actually fairly easily punishable. The punches, like I said before, very weird attack. So he's not always active around his face area, which will allow you to position around it if you get the timing correctly without adept dodges. However, if you do have adept, you can sometimes try to dodge into a fist that is moving and it not activate and then get walloped by the fist that's actually attacking. It's a bit odd. You get a feel for it if you fight him enough, but it is more consistent to just try to dodge either to the middle of him. That way it's going to be more consistent if you do get hit by it, or you'll just kind of slip right through the hitbox and he will pass you and you won't have to worry about being hit by a follow-up one. I'm going to try to get into comboing some stuff here, especially with the Mega Boomerangs. Whenever he doesn't get enraged, his classic Rajang, attack the tail to knock him out of enrage, and also his arms will heat up whenever he gets really mad. Arms are obviously not a great hit zone. I think they're okay with ice, but we're not only dealing ice damage here, so not something we're aiming for. And we don't have to worry about bouncing off of them, so it's more terrible for a Blade Master Hunter to actually attack the head than the tail, which you get that reward for, but for us, we kind of get to ignore it. And I think the head is just good enough of a hit zone to where we're not wanting to actually go for the back all the time. Of course, the rest of his body is also still a weak spot. It's just old Jin Ranjing, so it's fairly good fight for weakness exploit as well, but the face is still just the best in general. So the bouncing attack is one of those things where you want to avoid the first one by positioning and then dodge either into the second one or just position out of the way of the entire one. Generally, you can just run around it and like run to where he's at. However, sometimes he'll kind of be like the nerd super dive bomb where it will diagonally hit you downwards. Most of the time it shouldn't, but you want to be careful of that. You might just, run around him. And if you do dodge into the second one, your iframes will last long enough from the adept dodge to actually... He's moving to a pretty weird spot. Normally he doesn't move to that spot. Wondering why. Normally he goes clockwise, but it seems like he's wanting to go counterclockwise here, so I guess that's okay. But if you get the dodge on the second bounce, which will be the final bounce if he's not enraged, as we can see here, your iframes will still carry into the third one if he does hit you. So you can actually wait for the third one to land and then start a Mega Boomerang revving up, because he usually has a taunt animation after the bouncing attack, even when not enraged, so that's pretty nice. If you do get a dodge on the first one, you're in danger of being hit by the third because your iframes will not last that long. So either ready a soothing roll or try to position correctly out of the way of it. It's a bit harder to actually position, even though you are moving pretty quickly. It just really depends on the angle he actually hit you at with the first one. Comes a bounce. There's one. He's not actually aiming at us, so that's fine. This is a bit far, so I'm not going to press X here. Try to have the long one. Maybe he'll look at me. He's actually just getting mad here. Maybe it was actually perfect distance. Kind of. He bounced back into it, but didn't take that much damage from it. All right, there we go. We can counter this because he landed the third one, and we didn't get hit by it. Get a nice bit of damage there. Of course, since we're using a blunt weapon, as always, we get 10% less damage on our Mega Boomerang hits. So not great, but ice is really good here, especially the massive amount of ice from the Snow Baron stick. Maybe waited a little long for this, so I am vulnerable to being hit by a follow-up attack like that. Generally, you want to be moving when he starts the laser that jumps, because it should stop about halfway through the jump, something like that, tracking you. So at that point, as long as you're out of the way of where the laser would hit if he just stops immediately right there, then you can pull out a Mega Boomerang while he's mid-jump. However, if you want to be safe, you'll just wait until the jump ends and you'll be a little bit more vulnerable to a follow-up attack. However, you won't be as vulnerable to being hit by the laser. Of course, your favorite attack is going to be that standing laser. He can still do that when enraged, and it's just very slow when he's stationary. And whenever he starts it, he's stuck in that spot aiming it where it's at, so he can't actually move it, which is really good for you. Makes it so if you're anywhere out of the way of in front of him, you'll very easily just be able to get a Mega Boomerang off for free. All right, there's the Kelby hop. Tapped L for the camera, but it did not work that time. Come the punches. I'm going to try to dodge backwards. This is another similar move to Red Helm's claw combo, where if you try to move backwards after getting an adept dodge on it, you will be hit by a follow-up hit, so you don't want to do that. There's a spin. I'll throw one out here in case he does hop backwards. He did not, so that's good. Comes the standing laser, and again, it's just very slow, and sometimes he only shoots a bolt from it, which I believe is weaker than just the beam in general. The beam will be dealing lots of damage to us if we get hit by it, so we don't want to be hit by it. However, it's fairly telegraphed, so as long as we're not, being greedy or anything like that, we should be fine. I do want to actually heal at some point. Never mind, our cat healed us, so that's pretty good. And back hop there. He's doing a spin forward, so we'll try to punish the face. And again, since he's a walking weak spot, it really doesn't matter where you hit him. You'd rather have the face be hit, but it's not the end of the world. That's why we're not getting that many tail knockdowns, because we're not really favoring the tail hit zone at all, especially considering it's so small. Comes the Kelby hop, we'll dodge into it. All right, wait for him to back hop, very good. Didn't really know he was gonna back hop, but we saw the animation happening, so we're gonna be careful. 2 boomerangs here. Comes the laser. I really could have gotten that Mega Boomerang off, but I want to play it safe. Throw one more uncharged boomerang out here. Dodge the Kelby hop. Throw a couple more boomerangs there. He's going to do this. He's going to spin forward. That shouldn't hit us, but I'm going to just try to position a little further away. The Kelby hop can kind of ruin your flow, so sometimes it is better to just wait and see what he's going to do after, even if you do miss a couple of extra boomerangs in the long run. Doesn't really matter if you miss them if they don't hit in general. So I guess that's fine. 1 boomerang here. He's probably going to Kelby hop. Press the B button, but I was not out of my end blank there. I maybe could have mashed it and been fine, but I didn't mash it. Just kind of pressed it once. Looks like he's going to pull a rock out of the ground. Now, this is probably punishable. In fact, this one most certainly is. I think he's a little faster when he's enraged. So while you can get a Mega Boomerang out, he does jump after he pulls it out of the ground, so you might miss it. It really just depends on where he jumps, and if you get the angle correctly, you might be able to hit it as well. Punch combo, we'll go ahead and apply piercing. See what he does. He's probably not going to leave. Okay. Like here, yeah, I think I could probably, most certainly get a Mega Boomerang up there. So we'll try that next time we're close enough. However, if you do have to chase him halfway across the map, there's no real point actually trying to get a Mega Boomerang off there. Just punish him regularly with normal attacks. He's going to growl at us, so I'll go ahead and throw a charged one, or at least I thought I was holding it long enough for that. I was not. There's a spin, a couple of boomerangs here. Comes a slam. I'm just going to dodge backwards. Very trimmer heavy monster as well, so once again, trimmer resist might be useful. However, if you just dodge where he does a slam, you should be able to get a consistent adept dodge out. So unless you're really wanting to play close to him and get those Mega Boomerangs out and not be flinched by those, I wouldn't be too worried about it. Alright, wait and see what he does. The Kelby hop still also does damage. I don't know if it's actually enough, or not the Kelby hop, but the back hop from the Kelby hop. That does still do damage. I'm not sure if it's enough to actually knock you out of a Mega Boomerang. Probably. I wouldn't play with that. I mean, unless you want to experiment with it, but I wouldn't play with it during a real fight. So you want to assume it would. However, it does deal damage in general, and I think it can actually get to be pretty high at some point, so just be careful of it. Another general piece of advice I can give is try not to stay near him when he finishes the punch combo, as that can lead into another follow-up hit, especially if he's enraged, if he pulls out a spin or something. So be careful of that. In general, I'm not really close to him. I'm actually probably behind him most of the time when he does the punch combo, unless I've already been hit. Then you've seen what happens if I get hit. You're very vulnerable to follow-up attacks if you don't play it correctly. You got to figure out whether or not you want to get up immediately or, wait for him to hit you while you have iframes. So it is a balancing game you want to figure out. There's a horn break, finally. And another piece of advice I can give is for the jump slam, which he does like to do sometimes, the one that causes Trimmer, in a pretty wide area around him at the very least. The attack animation, or the attack speed, let me say it like that, does not change even if he's pretty far away, and it has some distance on it. So you'll always just dodge at the same time, which is a little bit after he's lifted up into the air. Maybe not immediately after, as I think there's still a bit of time where you won't get the adept dodge if you do it too early. And you can see the back hop just completely ruining our mega boomerangs there, unfortunately. But as long as you do that, you're going to consistently avoid it and also get an adept dodge on the Trimmer if he is close enough to hit you. All right, sound asleep. Now, I could use this for piercing boomerangs, and it's probably smarter. But the poor guy's sleeping with his eyes open, so I think we might just want to try to end him. Here, there we go. Okay, I'm glad I don't have to fight him without piercing for now. So yeah, again, not the most difficult, less timing than Devil Joe because he's a walking weak spot, and I've gotten better times than this before, I believe, but it's still okay. I'll go ahead and cover him up and meet you back at base. All right, back to the hub, and I will talk a bit about the health thresholds. So for Rajang, and I'm kind of surprised, he was only at 14,000 and something. I don't remember the exact amount. So for the amount of time it actually took to kill him, I'm kind of surprised it was similar to Devil Joe, because Devil Joe himself, and I did get more Mega Boomerangs off there, so that might be the reason, has 21,450, I believe, which is on par with the EX Deviants. He's not hitting as hard, obviously, unless you're being hit by the Dragon Beams, but that's a different story. But for a monster with not the best hit zones in the world, I'm kind of surprised we actually took him out in 25 minutes. Similar to Dread Queen EX, I believe, in what I've done so far. Either way, onto the weapon for Hyper Rajang. It's another one that's not particularly great. In fact, I didn't even talk about the range side of the Devil Joe. I'll talk about it in a second. This is going to be very similar, actually, in regards to Devil Joe. 220 melee attack, 24 melee thunder, and once again, negative 15% affinity with white sharpness. This one is not worth your time at all, unlike the Vangus Mace. So you have a raw option for Thunder Element in the Thunderlord weapon, which gives you more gauge gain and not negative 15% affinity. And for your element side of things, we'll be talking about it in a minute, but the Kieran Bolt Maximus has 55 Thunder Element and 170 melee attack. So while low on the raw side, that is a lot of element to be hitting with. As for the boomerang side of things, 199 raw with 12 Thunder Element. Not good. Still keeps the negative 15% affinity, so you're still having to offset that. And you have much better options. The sad thing is that you don't have many blunt thunder options, but this is not worth using, even if it is blunt, because you're also, of course, getting that negative 10% damage on your Mega Boomerangs. And again, very similar, the Vangus Mace XR has 199 Boomerang Raw with negative 15% affinity and a little bit more in 18 Dragon, but still not useful. Nowhere near the strength of your Shigari weapon or the Fatalis weapon. And talking about the Fatalis weapon, I'll talk about it when we actually get to it, but I believe that is better than this weapon, even though it does have blue sharpness. And it might be a case-by-case basis, but there are some other Dragon weapon options you have. It's just a standout that this one actually isn't that bad, even with the negative 15% affinity. And once again, as for the armor, only 158. However, you have a standout ice weakness with negative 12. So certainly you're not using this against an ice monster. The body armor, I believe, has a little bit more ice resistance, though not much, in 6. So it's adding up to negative 18. Which I'm assuming is because the Hunter armor probably has negative 18 on its resistances ice-wise. So, you're going to be better off using Deviant equipment or anything else like that, because the raw defense also is just not here. Alright, now that we have our fire weapon equipped, and you probably know the monster we're fixing to fight because I kind of just spoiled it earlier. It's an Elder Dragon. However, I don't want to get your hopes up too much. It's an Elder Dragon in G3. And yes, Lao is in G3, but this monster is nowhere near as difficult as Lao, if I can find the monster I'm looking for. And since it is an Elder Dragon, the quest is rotating, and that means it is not available right now. So I will have to cycle until I find it. There we go. All right, so the quest called A Pinnacle Just For You has us slaying a Kieran in the Ruined Pinnacle. Kieran has at least 3 quests, if not more. The quests it can take place in are the Ruined Pinnacle, as we see here, the Jurassic Frontier, and the Arctic Ridge. Off the top of my head, there's maybe another place you can fight it, maybe at the very least at the tower, though I want to say that's probably either high rank or an event quest specifically. That's generally where you fought it in older games, but for here, it's just these 3 as far as I can remember in G3. Either way, we'll go ahead and take the quest, and of course, we have our fire weapon equipped, and we'll head on out. And we spawn immediately with it, and Kieran is not actually that interesting. It's unique, and it is interesting. It's not that difficult. Let me say it like that. It's just a reskinned Kelby with lightning moves, so a lot of its melee attacks will be just turned into like ranged lightning attacks. Or it will just augment them with lightning. The scariest thing you have to worry about are, of course, the Kelby hops, which we were just dealing with Rajang. However, a lot of the time they just won't damage you. It'll just go right past you and you don't have to worry about it. The biggest thing I'll have to say is that whenever it's standing still and doing its kind of surrounding lightning attack, it can finish that with a homing lightning attack. So as long as you stay away from that, you should be fine. That's really the scariest thing, and a lot of its lightning attacks can paralyze you. I want to say maybe in the air. If you get hit by it in the air, it can't paralyze you. However, that may have just been a time where I was hit by it in the air, and I didn't have high enough tolerance to it, or I had too high enough of a tolerance to it that I didn't get paralyzed. Either way, it's not the scariest monster in the world, and you really can't expect that much from a reskinned Kelby. The quest usually takes 15 minutes at max. And sometimes, you know, only 10 minutes or something like that. He doesn't have that much health. And of course, since he's an Elder Dragon, he's not going to have any hyper variant, so we can't fight that for maybe a little bit more difficulty, though health isn't always the most difficult thing to actually chew through if it's a fairly simple monster pattern-wise. A lot of his attacks will just kind of be short like that, and he can combo it sometimes, so you're not immediately safe after the first one. When he does cover himself in kind of the lightning cloak, similar to World, where if you're playing Blade Master without any Mind's Eye skills or just moves on your weapon, you will struggle a bit, and especially you can still be comboed into lightning attacks that will paralyze you. However, it's not anywhere like World. It's not anywhere near as difficult as it would be if you were just fighting it like for the first time or anything. And there's no tempered versions either, so you don't have to worry about the extra damage either. Also, he's a lot spikier here. He doesn't have the flowing mane. He just kind of has what look to be ice crystals, which I guess, you know, kind of makes sense. If he's a static monster, his hair is probably going to stand on end, but oh well. We don't have to worry about, of course, the lightning armor. I do believe it takes some okay fire damage. Probably not the best, though. And of course, we're just going to aim for the face constantly. We'll get some downs on him too, which I think he just is one of those monsters, since you're not having to attack his legs too much since they're going to be cloaked in lightning. He's going to get some head downs, and think about something like Mizutsune and Rise, and I think in this game too, if you do enough damage to its head, it'll fall over a couple of times. So that's really just where you're aiming for. It only has 2 hit zones. It's not even like Rajang where it has a couple more. That's really all I have to say about it. It's not that complex of a monster, and again, you can't really expect much from a Kelby. So some of its attacks may look similar, like that little thunder call where it has the big large area. It's similar to Teostra's mid-range supernova, except it most certainly does not hit as hard, and it probably just ends in paralysis and not flinging you halfway across the map at the very least. And obviously we want to try to avoid hitting the body. However, it doesn't really matter too much. Since he's so small, it's kind of hard to hit him. And, you know, even if we do miss him, it might just hit the face anyways, just because of how he actually fights you. It's a fairly simple fight. A little hop forward with a little tackle. I do believe the tackle actually does damage you, so you do have to be careful. But again, a lot of his lightning attacks are more or less just him doing his melee attacks, but not actually hitting you with his body, and instead using lightning. That's a lot of how his patterns actually go as well. So you see the forward lightning attack that he does. It's similar to the tackle in that regard. Here's the close ranged lightning attack that he does that kind of surrounds his body. I was actually hit by the first one, which paralyzed me, and then led me into getting hit by the second one. That's the scariest thing you can do, and if that's the scariest thing you can do, then he's not really the scariest thing in the world. However, again, he's really interesting. He's a horse, right? You don't really see too many horses, and I guess unicorns specifically. And I thought it was pretty fitting to fight him whenever we fought Hyper Rajing as well. Hyper Rajing would most definitely dumpster him, but that's neither here nor there. Couple of boomerangs here. He does also like to run around a lot, so if the area is smaller, you'll have a better time fighting him. But if it isn't, sometimes he will just kind of run around and not particularly try to hit you. So I guess that is something. There's this little surrounding attack, and you always know after the little circling attack around him, you will be attacked by that homing attack. And even if not, it's better to assume you will be. Sometimes I believe you can call the homing attack out of nowhere, but it's telegraphed long enough to where you don't really have to worry too much about it blindsiding you or anything. If you're too greedy, of course you do have to worry about it, but as long as you're not, you're fine. Lightning strike's also pretty pinpoint as well, so they won't hit you outside of the radius that it looks like they'll hit you in. So that's a pretty nice thing too. Haven't gotten any downs yet, so I'll try to be quiet and maybe see one at some point. There we go, immediately get one. That's just fine. So it's not a very long down. You'll be getting more of them than usual. However, and we finally broke the horn here. Again, it's not a very long fight, but the down isn't very long, so you may not be able to get your Mega Boomerang out before it actually gets back up and moves around. So you might be missing some damage, and of course, if you're not at the right range, you won't be able to hover it into the face, and you'll kind of hit the lightning armor, which will also lose you some damage. So it's not the end of the world if you miss it. It's just not going to be the most advantageous to throw it out. And something I did notice there, don't normally notice it because I'm not that close to him, but he's actually very safe when he does the circling lightning attack right next to him. It might be more different with hunters because, you know, larger hitboxes and all, but for cats, just get right in under him. Now, you won't be able to reach the face that easily, and since you have range, you do want to take advantage of that, but if you are playing a beast cat or something, then you might be just fine to actually attack him from there. Or if you're just using a regular fighting cat to get him out or something like that. There's another down finally. We had 9 bars of gauge, so it was bound to happen eventually. We certainly have enough to punish for how short of a cooldown it actually is. It's a lightning attack forward. Kind of shook it off though. He might hit us with that, he does. And if you're close to him, he can combo his attacks pretty quickly. However, you saw how little damage that did. Yes, we have both of our defense buffs up, but even when you don't have it, it's not like dealing half of your health or anything like that. So it's not really too scary. I guess it's more of a chip damage thing than an actual, you know, big hitter like Devil Joe or Rajing would be. So it's not the end of the world, though Rajing's actually pretty heavy on the chip damage, especially considering he deals so much with it. So I guess you don't have to be too concerned about actually dodging the hits here compared to Rajing. There's a little horn tackle there. There's a double one probably. Yes, we want to stay out of the way of that. Actually, triple. Again, he can kind of just combo however he wants, which is neat. That's fairly unique. You don't always see a monster able to do it that quickly, but he's not that threatening. Got to tackle. We are down below half, but I think I'm just fine. I'm going to wait for the homing attack to hit there. Then I can punish with the double boomerangs. There's another one forward. Throw 2 more out. And I'll kind of shake off. Again, similar to Kelby. It's literally just using the same animations plus some new ones for Kieran. All right, good. A couple more. Throw 1 more out. We'll dodge the lightning bolt from the Kelby hop. That's fine. There's a tackle. I'm going to throw 2 out here to try to get them hovering in case he does turns around and attack us. Did not. I was focusing on what I was saying there because I said it wrong. And that just confused me. I'm going to try to heal this off and make sure I don't cart to him because with how much I'm talking about how not difficult he is, I'd rather not cart to him. Or at the very least lose an acorn. We most certainly will not cart. Alright, just a little lightning attack there. Throw 1 out, and you might favor uncharged boomerangs here because you just might not have the time to actually punish them with charged ones. Really just depends on what animation he's doing and how quickly he can combo you. There's one there. Get behind him. And I guess ranged might favor you here since he can't just immediately combo into his little quick attacks and jabs. But it's not really that important. There's a tackle. Boomerang out. Dodge away from that. He should be doing... yeah, he'll just throw a tantrum at range too, but nothing's close to him at all. I'm guessing maybe that's to try to catch people off guard running towards him and not letting him come to them. So I guess it could be a funny little thing where you're running towards him and he just kind of kicked you for no reason. But if you're a ranged weapon, you don't have to worry about it. Now, I will say this. When he does have his thunder armor up, he might be completely immune to ranged shots on his body. However, being the cats that we are, we don't use shot hit zone values. We use cutting because we're using a cutting weapon currently. So we're still dealing damage through it, especially with element, which is really nice. We don't have to worry about that. I believe it's the same for Kushala as well. At the very least, that's how it is in World. It might not be the same here. You might deal, very little damage to it, but you can still, hit him and deal something to him. However, one damage isn't really that useful. That's why we favor the element, because we're at the very least dealing something through that. I actually think I finally figured out why he does the kick randomly. It's actually a combo finisher. So when he does the lightning Kelby hop, it looks like, yeah, he'll just do the tantrum. So I guess if you're a hunter, you can take advantage of that somewhat. For us, we don't really have to worry about that, though. I mean, I guess it gives us extra time to attack, right? But we don't have to worry about being hit by it at all. And there we go. Didn't even limp away. I don't even know if he has a limping animation in this game. I want to say yes, but he didn't limp here. So yeah, either way, go ahead and carve him up. And I believe he actually only has 3 carves. And he's a fairly small elder dragon, so to speak. But most elder dragons have 4 carves, and this one only has 3. Okay, and this just happened, and this is showing us that we have no more box space. I guess I never grabbed a Thundertail before, but we can't grab it because our box is completely filled. We can take it and put it in our pouch though, thankfully, but that is a thing that happens, and I've talked about it before, but you can run out of box space pretty quickly for a Prowler playthrough if you're not making a bunch of gear. All right, back to base. We'll go ahead and talk about the weapon I already kind of talked about. The Kirin Bolt Maximus, if we can find it, is the best element side of things for your melee thunder weapon. Like I said before, 170 melee attack with white sharpness, 55 thunder element, and 0% affinity. Again, very massive amount of element. For an element weapon, you're really going to like that. As for the boomerang side, you have the same raw but less thunder element, so you're not going to be using it. And similar to the hyper barraging weapon, there are better options. So you don't have to deal with negative 15% affinity, which is actually pretty nice. For the armor, even less, only 142 defense. So, I don't really recommend going out of your way to fight Kirin in G3 unless you want the weapon for a beast prowler or regular melee cat. However, by the time you get there, you've probably fought enough Tigrex or Gores to have the same amount of raw resistance, and your regular elemental resistances don't matter too much. We just fought a dragon monster with negative 16 dragon resistance and did quite fine against it. Yes, the dragon attacks were pretty much just one-shotting us, but they were fairly avoidable. Okay, so I'm just gonna start here. I was talking about how the item box was too small, and it is. You can actually expand it here, and I forgot. I've done it on my main save where I'm 100% in the game, but I completely forgot it was an option because this is so out of the way, and you can kind of miss it. But if you do, or if you go up to High Rank Village, you will get the Sanatorium here. And if you go down to one of the lower decks, and you talk to Miss Meowdall, I believe they give you a whole spiel about a bunch of stuff, but you'll go to Lab Expansion, and there are actually 3 options for your item box expansion. I believe they give you 3 extra pages each, which is helpful. That's up to 9 extra pages, which is nice. So we'll go ahead and grab this. And it does need burn husks, which you probably have a couple of just from doing High Rank Village for random things. So that's nice. You also need them for transmog as well. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now our item boxes are up to 23 instead of 14. So we'll be able to carry quite a few more items. However, I will still go over what I actually did to make some space when you eventually, and you will, run out of space in the 23 slot item box. Most of these little extra things you can do only apply to supply drops, which we don't do because we can't use items. However, if you are a hunter, you might want to look into these. They do all cost burn husks, so if you don't want to gather too much of them, then I wouldn't really do too many of these. There's also some for allowing you to make a greatsword, and it actually gives you an interesting requirement for getting the items from the supply drops. So specifically the healing supplies SP action, which I assume is special action, gives you a first aid med plus set when you do the oh yeah gesture. So it's kind of an on-command supply drop, which is nice. It's not time-based like some of the other ones are. This is one for easy max potions when you faint, which is another really nice one as you get up to your max health if you are playing as a hunter. However, these don't really apply to us. But the main thing here is the Palico Armor Fusion is what we're looking at. When we unlock these with burnt husks, again, they do cost burnt husks, we will be able to actually fuse armor, and we'll go to armor fusion. You'll have to do these for all the hunter pieces as well. We can actually fuse our Palico armor and transmog them. So if we like the look of our Dread King set, which I can't quite do yet, and I'm actually looking at the wrong armor here, so let me go to the Dread King helm if I can find it here. So this is an interesting case where you actually have to do the EX version of a deviant monster to be able to transmog its specific armor pieces. For every other piece of armor, you just have to unlock it regularly. So if you actually have an armor set you like, I particularly like just the regular Rathalos set and the Pisarios armor set for cats. You could just do that normally. So while you can't get the defense of deviant armor until you actually complete an EX deviant, you can get the looks and defense of the Elder Dragon armors that have very similar defense and resistances and still have the nice look of the armor sets you do want. Now, I'm not going to do this right now because I really am not particular. I kind of like using whatever armor they give to me, but it is an option here if you do want to use it. And if we exit out after doing this, because I've actually completed, I believe, so far 4 EX deviants, she'll actually tell you, I believe, that you can actually do it. You just have to actually exit out. So if we go back into lab expansion, you'll see that we actually have the 4 deviants that I've done so far for Red Helm, Snow Baron, Stonefist, Drake Queen, and you have to use 8 burned husks per deviant. It's a bit silly, but I guess it's a small price to pay for having real cool looking armor. Either way, now that that rambling is out of the way, what I did was I spent some of my Horns coins, which I have a complete overabundance of, for armor fusion pieces. Horns coins you just get naturally by completing quests. You probably saw on the quest complete screen earlier whenever I was showing I couldn't grab the Thundertail. This is your probably largest amount of wasted space you're going to have. For hunters, you can transform them into different items that you can use. For cats, really the only useful thing are maybe the tickets. I don't believe they're even useful for you. And the fusion armor pieces. So you're going to have these just piling up completely in your box. Way too much, and you'll have to sell them. They don't sell for anything at all. Zero zenny, literally. So I guess it really doesn't matter because you're probably going to be at max funds most of the time. But you can actually transform the Horns coins into golden eggs, silver eggs, things like that. So if you are a hunter, you can actually offset maybe some of the equipment costs you're getting for making different weapons and stuff by turning them into golden eggs and selling those. Other things you can get rid of include life powders because you'll be getting them from your male cat. Not too many of them, and if you're a hunter, you probably would like a stockpile of them. The other alternative would be your sharp claws here. I had 509 of them before I sold a bunch of them off. Again, I didn't make anything from it because I had at max money, but this is probably something you're going to have a large amount of. Wyvern claws are also something you probably have a large amount of. The bones from low G and high rank as well. And then the Wyvern fangs. So these are things you can get rid of. However, I believe either the Wyvern fang or the Wyvern claws, and it might be both, can be made into different things. One of them being life powders. I think if you combine life crystals and Wyvern claws or fangs, you get life powder. So if you don't have enough of that, you can turn these into more life powder. However, it's more useful to not turn them all into that at once because you can bring combat materials on the quest when you actually run out of life powders. Either way, you walk up to this girl to spend your Horns coins. You can trade them for permits, which again aren't that useful because your Melcat's going to be giving you a lot of them, like with life powders. The main meat and potatoes here is the items you can get. You can get some ammo types, which I guess would maybe be nice for gunners. You don't have the largest collection of them, and maybe these are things you can't buy in the store. I do see they are level 2s and a level 1 dragon shot, so maybe that is somewhat useful, especially considering the amount you are getting. But the main nice thing are these Dusts of Lives. I believe these are just a life powder, but stronger. They may be like a life powder is a potion, and then a Dust of Life is a mega potion healing amount. I don't know the exact number though. So that's a nice thing. You can also, of course, like I said before, turn them into eggs, which will sell for a lot of money. I don't know if it matters how much you actually spend here, like if the silver egg is more cost effective than the golden egg or something like that. You may want to look into that yourself, but I don't really have to because I have max funds anyways. There's also these tickets like I was talking about before, and these 2 ores, I'm not quite sure what these are used for, but they are there if you do need them for forging and upgrading armor, but we don't upgrade armor, so we do not need them. Of course, raw steak and last but not least, you can also have raw meat or rare steaks, not well dones. I think well dones would probably be more useful, but oh well. Alright, with the rambling out of the way, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please consider leaving a comment below and maybe even consider subscribing. Until next time, bye.